a music that just about everybody will recognize. Certainly when it gets to be close to Christmas time, that is a ballet that is performed around the world and has been since the time of the composer Pyotr Tchaikovsky. We heard the Nutcracker Suite, 3 movements from the Nutcracker Suite, the Overture, the March, and the Waltz of the Flowers. All of that performed by the Harmony Ensemble of New York, directed by Stephen Richman. It is the 3 o'clock hour of Afternoon Classics, and I have a classical conversation. A really interesting premise going on today. I was contacted by NIgel Burgoine, who is here with me. He's the artistic director of Ballet Theater of Toledo, and he said, hey, have you heard of this new film called The White Crow about Rudolf Nureyev and his defection to Paris back in the 1960s? And I said, well, incidentally, I just had an interview with the composer of the film score to that movie at the same time. So we decided this would be a good excuse to bring it all together and talk about NIgel and his work with Nureyev, because I played that Tchaikovsky piece not only because Ballet Theater does the Nutcracker every year, but also because NIgel actually danced in the Nutcracker, chosen by Nureyev to do so. First of all, let me welcome you, NIgel.
Thank you very much.
Let me pull up your microphone a little bit. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
You may have to lean in a little bit.
Okay.
I know, it's a little different from dancing on the stage. But you were 12 years old,
yes,
right, when you made the acquaintance of Nureyev. Tell us the whole story. Fill in a little bit of your background for us.
Well, I left home when I was 11. I went to the Royal Ballet School. And when we were there, the famous Rudolf Nureyev had defected. It was quite amazing at that time that somebody would do that it caused such a political sensation and such an artistic sensation as well. And every opera house and ballet company in the world wanted him to go and dance with him.
Yeah.
And he then said, okay, I'm going to do a Nutcracker. And we were told at the Royal Ballet School we would be in it. Well, I mean, talk about excitement. There was about 35 of us dancing in the party scene, and the mice and soldiers as well, and it was so exciting. And we were like the middle tier. It wasn't the upper end or the lower end, it was our tier of dancers. And we all had to, and I'll never forget it, we all had to go and stand in what was called the Pavlova studio. And we were standing there, and we had our dance gear on, and the doors open, and in walked this man. I mean, the confidence, it was like he floated into the room. And he had a white sweater on and fabulous bell-bottom pants, which we could never afford.
This would have been the 70s.
Exactly. Well, the 60s. It was 68.
Close to the 70s.
Yes, yeah. And he walked in and he said, okay, you're doing this, you're doing that. And we started work straight away. There was no talking, no discussion. He was action from the very start.
Wow. Interesting. And I don't think that people realize what a huge influence Rudolf Nureyev had on the whole world of ballet and the reverence that was accorded to him, not only during his lifetime, but in retrospect. And the fact that this new film is coming out, I think, will open a lot of eyes of folks who maybe are not that familiar with Nureyev and what he did. Can you talk a little bit about his context in the world of ballet?
Yes. Well, for example, at the Royal Ballet School, we were being taught to be the partner behind the girl, and we were being trained as well to have a classical ballet technique. When he arrived on the scene, it wasn't just being the partner for the girl. You had to be this dynamic dancer.
Yeah.
I mean, he really was dynamic. And he trained and trained and trained, and he loved using other styles of dance as well and creating all the time. So he broke every single box. We've got to remember about this time, we were in the middle of the Cold War as well.
Yeah.
So he was such an amazing person who had shrugged everything off, basically walked out of his own home and left his whole family behind. And in those days, I don't think his family were treated very well because he was considered a traitor to Russia, But he wanted to dance and he wanted to start his life and create more and teach more.
Yeah, if you watch the trailer to the film The White Crow, which is directed by Ralph Fiennes, who also acts in the film. He plays the role of Nureyev's teacher, Pushkin. Yeah. Not to be confused with the author.
No.
But he talks about how it's about the dance. It's not about politics. It's about the dance. And an artistic choice that he made, that he wanted to show his art to the world. He wanted to be seen by the world.
Yep.
And go ahead.
And well, he was quite legendary as well, because he was touring with the Kirov Ballet, and he was one that was allowed to come out and tour around. So he'd sort of made friendships and relationships around the world. And I think, everybody turned around and said, you are so sensational. Why just stay in Russia? Why not make the leap to the West?
That makes a little more sense.
Exactly.
Yeah. But that's the story that is told in the film. I actually spoke with the gentleman who composed the score for the film, Elan Eshkeri, who is a British film composer and has worked quite a bit with director Ralph Fiennes, and they collaborated on this film together. I want to bring a little bit of that conversation, because he talks about the music and how his music fits in with Tchaikovsky. Let's listen in for a minute.
Mm-hmm.
This is a really interesting film, not just for the subject matter, which is the great Russian ballet dancer Rudolf Nureyev, but also for the way that the music works in the film, just by nature of the story. It's about ballet, it's about dancing, and certainly you were kind of working in the shadow of, composers like Tchaikovsky in this film score. Can you talk a little bit about how your music fits into the film and how it was affected by the subject matter?
Well, I think you've hit upon the main worry when I first started on the project, which was how do you write music that sits between two famous, incredible pieces by Tchaikovsky? I mean, that's a very daunting task. And I decided that what I would do is write very complete, fully fleshed out classical pieces, and that I would give them to Ralph.
That's Ralph Fiennes, the director.
Exactly. Yeah. So that it would be as if he had discovered an old composition somewhere. And was just using that and cutting it into his film. And because film music, it works as underscore, and typically it has a bit more space in it than classical music does. Mm-hmm. And so this was quite a different and bold approach. But it seemed to work, and Ralph, whenever we've worked together, we've always worked with quite uncompromising artistic ideas, and he really was brave with this. And when the music plays in the film, it really plays. There's no other sound. There's virtually no talking on top of it. When you get music, you really get the music.
That's the film composer for the movie The White Crow, Elan Eshkeri. You can find that interview, by the way, the whole interview, on our website at wgte.org. We heard some of his music there in the background, which features the violinist Lisa Batiashvili, and it's available for download from Deutsche Grammophon Records. We have a link to that on our website, again, at wgte.org. Go to the radio page and choose Classical Conversations. Speaking of Classical Conversations, I'm here with NIgel Burgoine from Ballet Theater of Toledo, and we're talking about Rudolf Nureyev, who is the subject of this film. I guess, it was a big deal back in the day that he made this defection. A lot of people made a huge political issue out of it, but as we said before, he sort of rose above that with his artistry. And I actually heard the screenwriter of the film talking about how it had nothing to do with politics and that it was all about the art. And when you worked with him, you were 12 years old, right? And
Yes.
you talk about his artistic discipline, which sounds incredibly daunting and scary to a 12-year-old. But I guess, I mean, what was going through your mind at the time? You had to be aware of all of the controversy and all of the, hubbub that had surrounded this talent. And here you were in the presence of it all.
Right. When he started the rehearsals, like I said, he walked in and he said, okay, done up, and music. And the pianist started playing, and we learnt the steps. From then on, all you thought about was the music, getting the steps right, and presenting yourself and being in the right place. You didn't think about anything else that was going on around you, and there was so much going on around. His eyes saw everything.
Yeah.
He saw one hand out of place, stop. We had to get that hand done. You saw one foot out of place, stop. You're in the wrong place. You're doing the wrong thing. I mean, it was focus, focus, focus. And I thought I would help because I was a party boy in the first scene. And in the battle scene, he made me the bugler. Well, at the time, I was learning the trumpet. So I came to the next rehearsal with my trumpet. Just as I had to jump up from within a castle, in the rehearsal studio, I jumped up and started to blow this trumpet.
Oh, my gosh.
He said,
Well, you weren't afraid of anything,
No,
were you?
he said, what do you think you're doing? And then he realized, and he went, no, thank you. Put the trumpet away. We'll just mime it.
He probably liked you even more after that.
Yes.
That's a great story. Well, what was the scope of your relationship with him? I mean, how long did you work with him?
We started at the Royal Ballet School, and it was the Royal Ballet's Nutcracker in 1968. And then I joined the London Festival Ballet, which was a big touring company. It was actually started by Sir Anton Dollin and Dame Alicia Markova, and they toured around the world in different festivals, and this company was made up of that. And I joined this company, and we did wonderful ballets like Scheherazade, Prince Igor, Petrushka, all of those famous ballets, and the classics. And then Rudolf Nureyev, Dame Beryl Gray was the boss, and she said to Rudolf Nureyev, would you like to come and do your production of Sleeping Beauty? So he turned up and did his first Sleeping Beauty with us in 1975. And then we toured that all over Australia, and we went and did a season in Paris with it. It was an absolutely visual, sensationally production. I mean, just you looked at it. It was Nicholas Georgiadis' designs, fabulous, but not much dancing for us. It was all about Rudy. So, but you stood there every night. We did 8 shows a week in 8-week tours, and then
it's like being on Broadway.
It was non-stop. And then when we did Australia, we started in Perth, and then we went to Adelaide, and then on to Sydney, and all the way through. Just non-stop performing, but fantastic.
This is when you were in your 20s, right?
Yes,
Your early 20s?
yes.
What's the story you told me about writing a letter when you were 12 to your 22-year-old self?
Well, it was because of Nureyev, and that section that was first played at the march from the Nutcracker, a huge pair of doors opened, and us as the children and came forward to the march. And I remember at that moment, as those doors opened, I looked out into the audience and I said, this is it. This is what I'm going to do with my life. And our English teacher, we were doing essays one day, and she said, all right, it's 10 years from now. I want you to write me a letter. Where are you? What are you doing? What are the other classmates doing? And I wrote the letter saying what other people were doing. I got some of it right, actually. And I said, but I was with a professional ballet company, and I was touring the world.
Yeah.
And at 22, I was on my second tour of Australia with Rudolf Nureyev.
Yeah, you just left out the part about Nureyev. But other than that, you got it all correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Well, do you still have that letter, or did you hang on
No,
to it?
No, she graded it. I think I got a B or something like that. The spelling was terrible.
Yeah, but, in retrospect, it should have been an A.
Yep.
A+. But what do you do? I mean, you work with young ballet dancers now. How do you sort of foment the interest on that level? I know you've talked about people who have gone off and gone to college, and, they have their careers, and they come back to you and still make dance a part of their life.
Yeah. The thing with classical ballet is you have got to be so dedicated. Every muscle has to be working right. For girls especially, you put your feet into those point shoes every single day. And what a lot of people don't realize, that in the world of classical ballet, male and female, every single day you go into work, whether it's a rehearsal period or whether it's performing, you have the chance of ending your career that day from an injury, or you have a chance of stepping up and furthering your career and going forward. It's never mediocre. It's always like that, and you've got to look after your body. Every side you've got to have outside interests. You've got to keep your mind healthy in that, because it's so focused when you're in the rehearsal studios.
Yeah, the discipline alone is monumental.
Yeah. Yep.
But I imagine folks who study that, like they study any kind of artistic endeavor that involves discipline. I mean, ballet is certainly close to the top, if not the top of that list.
Right.
It benefits them elsewhere in life.
Oh, yes. Yeah, the discipline, always being there on time. The dancers are always the very best for being there on time, being prepared. Walking into that studio, ladies with their hair greased down and the pins and the bun in place and the clean leotard and everything like that. It really does, you cannot walk into this studio looking a mess.
Yeah.
And once the music starts, you're not going to come walking through that door and say, I'm sorry, I was having a donut and I thought I'd come in later. No, that doesn't happen.
It works all the time here, but not at the ballet theater. Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's interesting. It's kind of a boot camp approach.
It is sort of, yeah, but we do have a lot of fun. I mean, those students do come out and I have a laugh with them and I give them their praise, and I always want to see them that they've achieved something at the end of every single class.
Yeah, and that's the reward.
Exactly,
as it were. I want to take a break and play a little bit of music. This is another track from the film score to The White Crow, the film about Rudolf Nureyev and his defection to Paris at the airport, I guess it took place.
Yes.
At Le Bourget.
Le Bourget Airport,
Yeah. This is the title track from the film The White Crow. Music of Elan Eshkeri here on FM 91. Well, you can definitely hear the Tchaikovsky influence there in that music of Elan Eshkeri, modeled after Tchaikovsky. We heard a little snippet of my conversation with Eshkeri earlier, talking about how he created pieces of music that were reminiscent of Tchaikovsky. My guest here in the studio today is NIgel Burgoine, who is artistic director of Ballet Theater of Toledo. NIgel, when you were listening to that, you said it sounded just like Sleeping Beauty? Right?
The Sleeping Beauty is the male solo from the second act.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's what I played. I don't know.
No, you didn't.
Yeah.
I can see because Rudy loved that solo. He loved that solo. It was beautiful.
Yeah. Violinist Lisa Batiashvili appearing on that recording. You can find that conversation, and soon you'll find my conversation with NIgel here posted online at the website. That's at wgte.org. Go to the radio page, choose Classical Conversations, and we'll have links to the White Crow soundtrack there as well. The White Crow, that's an idiomatic expression.
Yeah. The one who doesn't fit in.
Yeah, it doesn't fit in. It's kind of a double-edged sword, because it's not in the sense of a black sheep, an outlier. It's in the sense of somebody who's really too good in some ways, or too talented. And the other side of that is that, people don't like somebody who stands out.
Yeah.
Right.
And I with Rudy, I just felt, there was probably quite a bit of loneliness there.
Yeah.
He didn't trust many people. I remember him saying, actually, don't trust anyone. If you see pictures of him, he has a scar on his lip.
Really?
And I always thought it was a hair lip. But he said, don't trust anyone, because see how I got this? And we went, what? he held a biscuit in his mouth and bent down, and a dog bit his lip.
Oh my
He
God.
was handing the biscuit in his mouth to the dog, and it bit his lip. So he said, "Don't trust anyone."
Yeah, especially dogs.
Yeah.
when you're bearing food and tempting them that way, right?
A Russian dog.
Yeah. Wow. Well, you told me you have a lot of Rudy stories, and I would be remiss if I didn't ask you to dish a little bit and tell us some of those Nureyev stories.
Well, just fascinating stories that we, in this day and age, just would not comprehend. I mean, his family lived with two other families in an apartment in Russia. And one story he told was his mother took down the curtains and made them into a tablecloth and went into the market to sell the tablecloth to get food, to buy food for the family. Well, on the way back from the market, she was attacked by wolves.
Oh, no.
What did she do? She took off her shawl and set fire to it and waved it around so that the smoke and the flames scared the wolves away, and came home with this goose that she'd carried all the way through the forest.
And defended.
And defended it and cooked it for the whole family, and they all sat and laughed about it.
Wow.
I mean, we get angry if we can't find a parking spot at
I know.
Kroger's, don't we?
I have a problem with 10 minutes in the microwave, let alone having to deal with wild wolves chasing me for my lasagna or whatever it may be.
Yep. I mean, things like that you just look at. And I remember when it came to him having his costumes made, if the material was too long, he wanted it folded back. He didn't want it cut. Do not cut. Do not waste anything.
So it could be recycled.
Exactly. He didn't want anything wasted. It could be used again and things like that. But, he came from a poor background, but he had such a respect for money and valuable goods. That costumes were valuable. You're going to wear them all the time.
Well, were you able to sort of break through that facade of, the world-famous celebrity with him? And did you have any one-on-one sort of moments with him, or you feel like
not really.
Yeah.
No, he was.
He didn't let his guard down.
No. He was very guarded all of the time. He hated it if somebody overstepped the line and just tried to be funny, or I know Rudy. He does this, that, and the other. No. He would not accept that, and he would just completely ignore you and walk away.
Wow.
Yeah. His work in the studio, that's, you could see he was so focused. He wanted to make perfect. And we would work all day. When we started, we did the Sleeping Beauty with him, and then he did the Romeo and Juliet on us, and that was completely... The Sleeping Beauty he'd done with Canadian National Ballet. The Romeo and Juliet was done on us in 1977 and created in 3 weeks, that whole score.
Wow.
19 scenes, and the fight scenes and everything like that.
That's a long ballet.
Oh, yeah, very long. And we used to come in and do class at 10 o'clock in the morning till 11:30, and then we would have to wait all day long for Rudy to say, okay, now we're going to do Act 1 fight scene, now we're going to do Act 2 flag dance, now we're going to do Act 3 crypt scene. And we had no idea, so you'd have to sit and wait.
To see if you got it.
And then,
called.
and then at 5:45, when we're due to finish at 6, he would say, okay, I want the fight scene. But, no.
Good thing you were there.
Yeah, but actually on another occasion, I remember, and this was the power that he had at the Royal Ballet when he first, defected and came over. We were in his Nutcracker, and I remember one day we had all of our rehearsal schedules, and we had to be ready on that bus because we were in the middle of Richmond Park, a royal hunting lodge. That's where our school was, and we had to get into Baron's Court, the Royal Ballet School, which was about 35, maybe 50, close to an hour away through London traffic.
Oh.
And we were all sitting there, and it wasn't a rehearsal day, and I remember being in class, and the next thing... This ballet mistress, one of our teachers, came running around, banging on doors, get out. And we were like, what's going on? You've got a rehearsal. No, we haven't. Yes, you have. we had to drop our books and things like that, and the teachers were shouting at the ballet teachers saying, no, they've got to study. And we had to run out, we had to run to our dormitories, get into our tights, jump on a bus. They had to find a bus and drive us all the way up there. And they came in, he goes, okay, children, ready? And it was just like that.
Jumped right into it.
Unbelievable. Could you imagine pulling a whole school out and saying, you've got to be in this rehearsal in the next 30 minutes?
Well, he was Nureyev.
He was.
He could make it happen.
He was the man who said what was going on.
Yeah. I'm talking with NIgel Burgoine, who had a long-time association with Rudolf Nureyev, the remarkable Russian dancer who defected from Russia to the West in 1960. I can't remember.
62.
Something like that.
62, 63.
And that story is in a new film called The White Crow. Now, I don't think we're going to see it in Toledo, but I'm sure it'll make its way to, some video viewing service somewhere down the line. What little bits I've seen of it, it looks really interesting. Now, I know that Ralph Fiennes, the director, chose basically an unknown Ukrainian dancer to play the part of Nureyev because he had sort of a natural talent. It even looks a little bit like him. It's interesting. But that kind of led me to go spelunking through YouTube and looking at old videos of Nureyev. And really, if you're not familiar with his dancing, it is worthwhile to go watch him because even now, and even if you don't know that much about ballet, I count myself in that category. Just his presence is remarkable on the stage, the way he holds himself and the way I mentioned to you before we got on air, watching him, leap and go around in circles. He looks like he could just go off the rails at any minute, There's so much energy there. But I know that it's perfectly controlled, right? It was like controlled chaos.
He knew exactly where he was going on that stage. He knew exactly where he was in the music. He was incredibly disciplined that way. Nothing ever changed from evening to evening whenever we did the performances. Yeah. And one of the things, I remember another dancer said to me, we were talking to him one day about something in rehearsal, and he was in a good mood, and I was dancing with this girl, and we walked away to the back, and she said to me, he has amazing laughing eyes. When you looked into his eyes, they actually sparkled. They were laughing, and they weren't always laughing when things weren't going right.
Yeah. Wow, that's wonderful. Yeah. Well, we've got to wrap it up here because we're going to turn over to the news crew momentarily. But last word, Nigel, anything that you want folks to know about Nureyev?
A legend, an incredible person. I mean, such determination, and really a true artist.
Yeah, wonderful. NIgel Burgoine, Artistic Director of Ballet Theatre of Toledo, who spent quite a bit of time with Rudolf Nureyev, the famous dancer. And Nureyev, also the subject of the new film, The White Crow, directed by Ralph Fiennes. So a nice little confluence of conversations that we had going on today. Yeah. Thanks for joining us here on FM 91.